Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own. Enjoy the show. Welcome to MS&Me Interviews. I am your host, Erica Lyons Richardson. Thank you for joining me this week. This week is not going to be the typical interview show that you're used to hearing. This week we are getting a little more personal. We see often in our MS&Me forums on social media that many of our MS patients experience loss of personal, familial, or social relationships after being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Sometimes it's a very serious impact, loss of marriages, loss of very close family, best friends who no longer speak to them after diagnosis. Sometimes they don't even know why. They're never told why the relationship has ended or shifted. Sometimes the relationship doesn't completely end. It just seems that they're never the same after diagnosis. So let's dive a little deeper into this subject. We're all familiar with the idea of physical disability or even possible loss of employment once a patient is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. However, I don't think everyone is quite as familiar with the deep impact, not just financially, not even just physically, but emotionally for the MS patient after diagnosis and with progression of the disease. Not only do they sometimes lose their self-identity with loss of their employment, they lose all those friends they had at work, all the social events that surrounded their employment. Also, with the physical disability, there can come emotional isolation. You're not able to attend family functions. Your friends stop inviting you out for dinner and occasions. Even when you're able to attend an event, if you have a physical or cognitive impairment from your multiple sclerosis, it seems that you're just kind of set apart a little bit from the action, so to speak, at certain events. Even if I can use a personal example, graduations, the Thanksgivings, Christmases. If they're at my house, there's no problem. But if it's held at my brother's home, his home is only accessible by a very tall flight of stairs enter their home, whether it's through their garage, through their back entrance, or even their front stairs are quite high, and I'm wheelchair bound. So there's no way to get me into their home. So recently, my nephew had his high school graduation, and I was unable to go to attend. So this can be very isolating for the multiple sclerosis patient. It can even cause anxiety with social occasions, with dating. If I do have a physical impairment, am I going to have trouble, getting up the stairs at a restaurant? Or if you're in a dating relationship, can I go over to their place because it might not be wheelchair accessible or accessible to my walker? There can be all kinds of physical and emotional social limitations. But let's dive even deeper into these disconnects with personal relationships, with familial relationships, even with our friends that we've known, for quite some time, that we had a deep relationship with. It can change quite drastically. So, what is that deeper element that seems so elusive at first when we're first learning about multiple sclerosis? Why can it be that someone that you've known for so many years or known so deeply, that all of a sudden they can just not understand what you're saying, misread your feelings. You misread theirs and their feelings and intentions, and arguments can start, or you just suddenly stop hearing from them. What can it be that's even deeper than, oh, I just acquired some physical disability from multiple sclerosis? It's estimated that 65% of the MS population will face cognitive dysfunction. It affects memory, attention, concentration, information processing, visual perception, and word finding, plus other things as well. Studies have shown that problems in structural integrity of the ILF and IFOF, which are white matter tracts that are present in the brain of those patients that are with MS, that are having the facial recognition dysfunction, but only if they exist in the right brain. So what is that? What is facial recognition dysfunction? And what are these other cognitive dysfunctions that might play a role here? That might be the missing piece of the puzzle that we don't quite understand, and that frustrates us when we feel like we've done something wrong and all these people are exiting our circle. So handling recognition loss. What is that facial recognition loss, and how can we handle it better? You might say it's, okay, say you and your mother or father, people who couldn't know you better in the world, are sitting across from you. You might not even recognize them for a moment as your mother or father sitting there. It might actually take you a minute or more to even process that this is my mother sitting across from me, or this is my father sitting across from me. Something that you might not ever think would actually be possible unless someone's back is turned to you across a store, or you might not recognize your neighbor way down the street because you can't, visually get a line on them. But there can actually be problems with MS cognitively, reading someone's face and recognizing who they are. Now that goes even deeper. Not just recognizing who they are until we've had a minute to process, but we might not even read the emotions on their face properly. They could be happy. We could read them as angry and actually give them an angry response because we're frustrated with, why are you angry with me or frustrated with me? They could be angry and we can misread them as happy or okay. And us not having a response to that or an adjustment for that can make them angry. They can make them even more angry at us, and we're just not reading it. Now, in turn, it can go the opposite way. Because of MS damage, there can be an issue with them reading the expressions and emotions that we're feeling. We'll get into that a little bit later, but let's go into more of the recognition loss and how we can handle it better and deal with that. And how we can also tell, our loved ones what to expect with that. So maybe we can prevent some of the losses of those relationships if they're aware. So handling recognition loss. Here are a few details that, we could share here on how to handle impaired facial recognition. Number 1, know your recognition limits and understand that recognition loss is unpredictable. Don't waste mental energy by concerning yourself with what might happen next, since it may not. Number 2, seek a professional opinion from a neuropsychologist who can confirm the impairment and MS link. Number 3, talk ahead of time, which I do this, with a close family and friends so they will understand your need for a minute to sort out your thoughts. The pause may relieve unnecessary pressure to struggle for a connection. Number 4, also tell the people you care about and who care about you that you are having difficulties in thinking and focusing so they can understand and support you. Before grasping at cognitive disconnections, seek out a safety person backing you up during those confounded mental MS moments, and so you're better able to hold strong to your vitality. Now, my mom's my safe person because she and I were the first ones who realized I was doing this. And she actually told me that, there were times that she thought that my feelings were completely different than the inflection in my voice. So she would sometimes hear an angry voice when I was happy. She would hear a happy voice when I was frustrated. And we started mirroring back those with a question before we misread each other or got upset with each other. Like when she did detect an angry face because I was grimacing, sometimes out of pain or a muscle spasm or dystonic activity, or she detected an angry voice or a graggly voice, sometimes even because of my dysphagia, dysphonia, and all that, it would change my voice. She would ask. She would confirm with me my feelings. She's like, "Are you upset about something?" Or she would say, "You're in a good mood, aren't you?" Just to confirm. We would kind of mirror back feelings to each other. And it really did help because, her being older, she's in her 70s, she naturally, with aging, experiences a little bit of that herself. So it really improved our communication. I also started using it with my father, and that helped a little bit as well. He didn't quite get it as well as she did, as quickly as she did. So she's more my safe person instead of him when these things are happening, and she can speak for me on certain occasions when I'm unable to express myself properly, or if I'm in a crowd or a social occasion. Now, if she's not there, my husband has learned to do it. And he finally gets it and understands. He doesn't understand it quite as well as her because he was, at work more when this was first happening to me. So, she saw it from the get-go and she really has a real basic understanding of it. And he just kind of knows to generally explain the cognitive dysfunction and explain, that why I might be speaking in a certain tone or things like that. So he can explain the situation, or he can explain something to me if he sees me getting a little agitated or anxious at a party or social occasion, and he comes over and he'll ask why. Sometimes it's because I misinterpreted someone else's tone or facial expression, and he could say, no, I think you've misread that, so I think everything's fine. And then I'll know to kind of ease my anxiety. So you really can work as a team with your really close people around you to explain things in those situations. Now, the next thing is to remember that if this is part of your MS, then give all your significant others permission to softly remind you of the moment and give them a hug for caring. Okay? So you can give each other those cues and reminders, like I said, socially and personally in between you guys. You can really maintain those connections. Now, laughter brings people together and is a survival path through MS. Use it often and perhaps learn to laugh first and enjoy your life. If you intentionally didn't want to remember someone, feel free to make it clear that you would let them know. Make everything clear and restate things once you realize that there was a misread or miscommunication. Laughter is a huge part of it. One of the reasons why we started our page on Facebook, MS&Me Laugh Break. That way, patients, their families, caregivers can go there anytime they just need a little break and a laugh. Funny jokes and memes and stories are on that page, and it's really a great tension reliever. Sometimes when you're just in pain and you're trying to block it out and you just need a distraction, that's a great resource. For me personally, my greatest source of laughter, besides my children, my boys are a great one, is my sister. She and I can make each other laugh and laugh for hours till our faces hurt. It's really great to have that one person that you can always go to in those situations. And the last thing is, see your doctors and therapists regularly to discuss the effectiveness of your treatments and whether any changes are needed. Sometimes adjustments can be made or additions can be made that can really relieve some of the symptoms surrounding these cognitive dysfunctions, or that are fueled by the cognitive dysfunctions, such as anxiety, depression, etc. So it can really help to treat these other secondary symptoms that arise from the cognitive or physical dysfunctions. Now, let's go even deeper into the facial expressions. Another form of these cognitive dysfunctions among people with MS, as I said, is the impaired ability to recognize the emotional facial expressions. So not just recognizing that person, it's that emotional facial expression. A 2014 study tested a cohort of 61 MS patients with unimpaired visual acuity and 53 healthy controls. Also investigated were possible relationships between impaired facial expression recognition and other clinical features such as the depression. The results showed that MS patients were not impaired in facial identity discrimination, but showed a poor performance in all subtests that required emotional recognition. The study concluded that impaired recognition of facial emotions by the patients with MS seems to be associated with both cognitive and affective, which is depression, aspects of the disease. So it's a little more complex than just, brain lesions and cognitive dysfunction, of just visual recognition. Abnormal facial expressions can occur as a result of conditions that damage the nerves to the face, such as MS. Damage to the brain can also cause impaired movement, including changes in facial expressions, which is the part I said where my loved ones or friends and family were misreading my facial expressions and emotions. So there's even another aspect to this that might really impact relationships, trust, that aspect of your relationship breaking down. It's our physical reaction time. Let me give you an example. Everyone's in the room at a social occasion, and in your family, it's a little old school, and the women, very old school. I'm Southern, can you tell by the voice and accent? Uh, Everyone in your family, they're the ones who clean up after the kids or clear away the dishes after dinner, things like that. So after, things start winding down and everyone starts to get up to clear the dishes, you're the only one of the females not to get up immediately, kind of on cue, without anybody saying anything, to start clearing dishes or cleaning up something around the kitchen. So, of course, they start looking at you and thinking, okay, is she lazy? Does she just not care? That's a little rude. They just start thinking this to themselves, even though they wouldn't say it to you. But these are the kind of things that start building up, and people start kind of cueing off of you that you might not even know they're thinking. You're standing in your house, you have a couple family members or a couple friends around, and one of the kids fall. They're just walking and they just fall down like little kids often do. You don't immediately kind of lean toward the child and start picking them up, but someone else does. And then you kind of start thinking to yourself, oh, they fell. Someone else already picked them up. But they're already looking at you, staring, going, why in the world didn't she pick the child up? What's wrong? Doesn't she care? It's that little delay in our reactions, our normal reactions that we would have always done before, that can have people going, well, that's weird. That's rude. And they don't quite understand that our MS is at play. It's not our normal reaction. But sometimes we have MS so long before we're even diagnosed that it becomes what they always think of us. We always, to them, don't have normal reactions. We always seem slow or aloof or rude or some negative other word in their reasoning. And we don't even know this is going on. This is where those relationships can slowly fade away, where we don't even know why. Between them misreading our emotions, we're misreading theirs. We physically can't do the things we could do before and be as active socially. We have now possibly lost our job. We lost an income, so we can't afford to be as social, to give everyone a gift at Christmas, to come on the family vacation. Physical impairment and disability has now become to a point where things aren't as accessible. We stop showing up for things because we start worrying about, are we going to be able to physically participate? Is heat exhaustion going to be a factor? There's just so many things. And then the relationships start to splinter, and we are left hurt and sometimes confused. It can even be those most crucial of relationships, best friends, sisters, husbands and wives and partners, and we just don't understand, and we become very heartbroken. We become depressed, which can even make fatigue even worse. And we shut down even more, compounding the situation. We sometimes start blaming ourselves, running the situations over and over again in our mind, the argument that ended the relationship, and we replay it. Why did I say that? Why did they get angry? Why did they say that? I don't understand. Why did they just stop responding to me? Why am I not on their friends list on Facebook? Why did they unfollow me on Instagram? all these things start compounding in our lives. And that can add to the anxiety and depression, which are already symptoms of MS. This is how it starts to build up. And it can become a major crippling factor in our lives. If we can identify these symptoms early, speak to our doctor about them, possibly, like I said, treat other secondary issues or even better treatments, primary treatments for our MS activity in the first place. Find better primary treatments that prevent further cognitive damage. All of these things combined, and having those safe people and having those safe words, so our partners can really help protect us against, the breakdown of our wider relationships. It can be so vitally important. It's like, for other people who don't have MS or cognitive dysfunction, think of it this way. You know how when you have a phone call, you can read people's inflection in their voice, you can get a read on people's emotions, you can state something and they know when you're joking, when you're not, when you meant something, when you're angry, when you're not. But when you're texting them, when you're messaging them, you slipping in somebody's DMs, they don't get that. They don't get that voice inflection, human emotion, facial recognition of emotions. And what happens? A lot of misunderstanding. Miscommunication is so much greater when it's the written word. So think of that as we go through life that way sometimes. For some of us, the cognitive and physical dysfunction is so great that our whole life is like one written word miscommunication with no inflection and proper facial emotion. And at times it's even greater for us than others. There's times that we can make a greater inflection in our voice, a better tone in our voice. We're having a good day. We're not very fatigued, not very stressed, not in a lot of pain. And our cognition isn't as stressed. So we do react a little better on the reaction time, and we perceive a little better. So we do have good days and bad days. And recognizing that difference does not mean that someone is faking or making it up on a bad day is very important. So I hope this has helped you guys to understand this very confusing and sometimes painful part of some people's journey with multiple sclerosis. Please feel free to share this with friends and loved ones. I hope that my own personal cognitive dysfunction I've had with this last exacerbation has not prevented me from sharing this information to you effectively, because I really want them to understand what you're going through with this part of your multiple sclerosis. Thank you again for joining me this week. If you would like more information on multiple sclerosis, you can follow any of the MS&Me forums on social media. You can also visit us at msandmemedia.com. That's msandmemedia.com. Have a great week.